I am still trying to wrap my head around what we just saw. Old school NASCAR doesn't get any better than that. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Welcome to Out of the Groove. The spring Bristol date made its triumphant return to concrete this afternoon. Beautiful weather there in the Tennessee mountains. Happy St. Patrick's Day as well to everyone. This is one of the few green shirts I have in my closet. Yes, it is green. I feel like the camera is making it look almost like a muddy brown. It's green, I promise. Here, I have a brown notebook. Look, compare. Yeah, this is green, I promise. I'm not getting pinched today. Do people still do that? I don't know. So much to get to today. As per usual, we'll break down the battle for the win. We'll discuss some of the other top finishers, top performers. We'll put this race on the groovy gauge at the end. Do we have our second perfect score of the year already? I'm not going to spoil things just yet, but let's begin with the word of the day. Tires. I looked at my phone and a Goodyear was trending nationwide within the first 100 laps of this race. Tires, tire wear, tire degradation, tire conservation. Boy, I hope no one out there is playing a drinking game this afternoon. Today's race was beautifully old school because drivers were asked to save their tires from the drop of the green flag. For many, many years, since well before my time, the best stock car racers in the world have been judged largely by their ability to conserve tires while maintaining pace. It's an art, it's a skill that in some ways has been lost in the top ranks of NASCAR in recent years, but there's a reason why Kevin Harvick and Clint Boyer on the Fox broadcast kept mentioning late model stock car races. Tire conservation is what decides many short track races in this country. Typically, you don't have many tires in your pit, so you gotta save the ones you got. A great stock car drivers should be skilled in a variety of areas. There are some who are just flat out fast. They can put their car on the hairy edge. They know how to get the most speed out of their machine. I think of a Ryan Newman, who was nicknamed the Rocket Man for a reason, or Kyle Larson perhaps today. Raw speed is a very important skill, but arguably just as important historically has been your ability to save equipment. And as we saw today, many veteran race car drivers who've raced in older NASCAR eras, they thrived today while some younger drivers were in a little over their head. We'll get to that in just a moment, but I want to start with some of Goodyear's comments that they made mid-race. Like Dale Earnhardt Jr. said, they were putting out PR statements before the event was even over. Greg Stucker of Goodyear, who I've actually had on the show, did a video with a couple years back, spoke to reporters and expressed confusion. This is the exact same rules package, the exact same left and right side tires Goodyear brought to Bristol last fall. Why were they wearing out so quickly? Why wasn't any rubber being put down onto Bristol's concrete surface? Stucker said, quote, "Tire wear is always the goal. That's what people want to see. We thought we were in a really good spot last year with the tire as we raced it in the fall. And obviously, something is different now. This is too drastic." The big change between last fall and this spring was the application of a resin on the inside lane, not PJ1 as has been used in years prior. Didn't seem to make much of a difference last night for the Truck Series, but made a huge difference for the NASCAR Cup Series cars. But I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about his last point, that what we saw today is too drastic in Goodyear's eyes. Maybe it was a touch too much. I'll agree with him there, but the last thing I want to see is Goodyear bring a rock-hard tire to Bristol in the fall or to other short tracks on the schedule. The last thing I want to see is Goodyear overreact. 54 lead changes today. Not only a Bristol Motor Speedway record, but a NASCAR Cup Series short track all-time record. It was refreshing to not have to talk about aero blocking, track position, it's hard to pass. None of those typical next-gen issues were discussed at all today. I love that. And the teams all learned as they went. Early in the race, they all fired off a little too quick, blew their stuff up fast. Then they went ultra-conservative, and run after run, they upped the pace slightly, pushing the issue, trying to find that edge. And in stage 3, after 40, 45, 50 laps, we found that edge. But it was predictable. You knew 40 laps into the run, the worst handling cars or the drivers that did the worst job saving their stuff, we knew they were going to fade. Predictability is all you ask for. Random blowouts, that's no good. But predictable blowouts, teams can work with that. That leads to great racing. And this is what I want to talk about next. The most experienced drivers learned quicker than the inexperienced drivers. Again, tire conservation for many, many years was a core stock car driver skill. This race was old school in the most beautiful fashion. Only 5 cars on the lead lap at the end, but did anyone care? This race was unbelievably entertaining, and the best drivers finished up front. Experience beat youth today. Joe Gibbs Racing dominated really this whole race, but especially that second to last green flag run. All 4 JGR Toyotas were 1, 2, 3, 4. But after about 45 laps, it was the younger guys, Christopher Bell and Ty Gibbs, who faded, who fell off the map, who both wound up with flat tires and had to pit early. The veterans of Martin Truex, Denny Hamlin, who come from that older NASCAR era, they knew how to save their equipment best. They extended their lead and ultimately finished 1-2. And another veteran driver, a former champion, Brad Keselowski in a Roush Ford, wasn't far behind them. It was fascinating at the end of this race to see the narrative completely flip. All day long, Fox was talking about the 54 car. Ty Gibbs looks to be the fastest. But the moment we reached our longest runs of the day towards the end, the 54 faded, because as fast, as talented as Ty Gibbs is, he does not have the experience that Denny Hamlin, Martin Truex Jr., Brad Keselowski have. Maybe one day he'll learn how to conserve his tires the way the veterans have, but in this modern era of NASCAR racing with stages, go, 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 get stage points, keep your track position, get track position, it's so hard to pass. Go hard, go hard. In this era of NASCAR racing, maybe Ty will never learn. That's why veteran drivers like Hamlin, Truex, Keselowski are still so valuable to race teams, because that's a skill they still have in their back pocket. It's a tough skill to learn these days, the way NASCAR races are currently typically run. So I just wanted to make that point. Some races come down to late race restarts. You got to have that raw speed, that aggression. You need to be daring enough to make bold moves, and some drivers thrive at that. A lot of the younger drivers do. But other races like this one, an old school race, played into the hands of some old school veteran drivers. So it was just cool to see that. In this day and age when the cars are all the same, and with SMT data, drivers often race the same, it was cool to see the long run show us the difference in driving styles. The way Hamlin and Truex were handling their cars compared to Bell and Gibbs. We don't often get to see that anymore with how equal things are. So I found that to be very interesting there in those final 100 laps. Let's move on though and talk about a few other drivers. You'll see the top 15 finishers right here. Gosh, things got so jumbled up there down the stretch. All 4 Joe Gibbs Racing Toyotas still finished inside the top 10. Throw in John Hunter Nemechek in a Legacy Motor Club Toyota. He scores a 6th place finish, his best of the year. You know, after Toyota dominated Phoenix last weekend, I got a lot of comments on my video saying, oh, it's just one race. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Yeah, sure, it is early in the season. This year will likely have ebbs and flows. But like I correctly pointed out last week, Toyota is way ahead of schedule. I think everyone expected this new Toyota Camry to be fast, but we didn't expect them to dominate races 4-5 weeks into the season. I'm just saying, Ford, with their new Mustang Dark Horse, they've got some work to do, and Chevrolet especially. They won the first 3 races of the year, as they should, since their notebook with their current car is way bigger than Ford and Toyota's current notebook. But Toyota, I think, has caught up way faster than anyone anticipated. It is early this year. There will be some ebbs and flows, but it's safe to say Toyota is ahead of schedule, and if you're a Ford or Chevy fan, that should be a little concerning. That's all I said last week, and I'm sticking to it because so far I've been proven right. Huge shout out to Alex Bowman and Kyle Larson, and shoot, even Chase Elliott with a top 10 finish. Bowman and Elliott didn't seem to have much on the short run, but it's clear they were conserving their tires really aggressively, and with those 2 long runs to end this race, got on and off pit road cleanly, made up a bunch of track position. Really well-deserved finish for both Bowman and Chase Elliott. And Kyle Larson there in the top 5, he was kind of the best of both worlds, because he often ran with those Toyotas up front early in the runs. He also seemed to not only have great pace, but was also able to save his equipment. Equipment interference penalty in stage 3 cost him all of his track position, could have cost him a top 10 effort, but Kyle Larson's really freaking great. He's a veteran racer himself at this point in his career. Great race team around him. They rebounded to finish top 5. Shout out to RFK. Another great week for them. 3rd for Brad Keselowski. Just mentioned his veteran experience coming into play. And Chris Buescher, who won the night race at Bristol a year and a half ago. Had an up and down day for sure. Was sometimes in the mix, sometimes not. He ends up 7th. Good overall race for Roush. Michael McDowell finishes 11th. Todd Gilliland, his front row teammate, finished 26th. McDowell, a veteran, was able to keep the tires on it a little better than his very young teammate. It was interesting, those final 2 runs, there were a few cars who consistently would just fall off a cliff, 40 laps in. And Todd Gilliland was usually one of the first. So some of that was the car setup, I'm sure. A lot of that is also probably a younger driver who's never had to aggressively conserve tires. Gilliland struggled at the end of this race despite being a top 10, top 5 threat for much of the first half. How about 3 Stewart-Haas Fords right there, just inside the top 15? Josh Berry at one point radioed his crew, this is the most fun bleep he's ever done in his life. Late model racer who in recent years has gotten a lot of practice saving his tires. This was right up his alley. We saw that Sunny D car up front quite a bit tonight. They're not pictured here, but I do want to shout out Rick Ware Racing. Justin Haley wound up 17th, Kaz Grala 19th, but they both ran inside the top 10, top 15 for much of this race. Again, 2 young drivers I think were bit by those long runs at the end. They didn't save their stuff as well as some of the veterans. So while they ran 8th to 12th, they finished 17th and 19th. I mean, that's going to happen, but still, some very encouraging speed and performance shown by that team. Penske really struggled on the long run. Ryan Blaney finished 16th. Joey Logano was outside the top 20. I'm worried about that 22, y'all. Entered this race 30th in points, another finish outside the top 20. I'm not sure what else to say. Another huge concern I have is with Kyle Busch. The RCR cars were just off for the second week in a row. And if Kyle Busch is off at Bristol, you know you have a problem. Pit crew also made a big mistake there towards the end. Once again, left a wheel loose. Busch had to back it up so they could tighten it. That's what happens when you have your 5th different pit crew combination in 5 weeks. Can we get some stability? Let these guys learn each other, build some chemistry? Changing things up every week clearly isn't working. A few other no-shows today. Unfortunately, William Byron got into the wall early on, was sort of squeezed up there by Bell and Logano making contact. Sucks for him because I saw him passing cars inside the top 10 late in this race, so if he hadn't had that issue, he likely would have finished near where his teammates did. Tyler Reddick's team left him out on old tires early on. He got run over straight up, looked like the scene from The Lion King. Then he got T-boned by Zane Smith, who's just had an abysmal 2024 so far. Come on, the brake pedal's on the left. I'm sorry, but you had plenty of time to see what was happening in front of you there. I don't know how you wreck your car so badly. Anyway, those were just some of the most notable finishers in this race. So much happened today. Like I said at the beginning, my head is still spinning. I'm checking my notes right now, and I just stumbled across some quotes from NASCAR. Earlier, Goodyear's Greg Stucker was kind of like, maybe this was a little too drastic. NASCAR's John Probst said, quote, "All in all, I think it was probably one of the best short track races I've ever seen." So maybe Goodyear thought things were a little too extreme. Maybe some fans out there thought things were too extreme, but it sounds like NASCAR, to use an unpopular quote, they like what they're seeing. I think that's a great transition. Let's put this race on the Groovy Gauge. The Groovy Gauge is powered by electric e-bikes. The weather's warming up. Seeing a lot of folks on spring break. Check out electricebikes.com. Shop their entire supply. I've recently gotten my electric XP 3.0 back out, getting some miles in it once again. Really appreciate Electric E-Bikes sponsoring the Groovy Gauge. As you heard in my opening monologue, I thought this was a fantastic old school NASCAR Cup Series race. If you like old school, it doesn't get any better than this. Clearly, NASCAR agrees, at least. Is it worthy of a perfect score? Man, someone in the comments reminded me a few weeks ago, I'd gone more than a year since giving a perfect score on the Groovy Gauge, and then I gave Atlanta a few weeks ago a 100%. And I think that was deserved. Atlanta was the perfect new school NASCAR race. No one was saving tires there. It was a tight pack, lots of jostling for position, an all-time classic 3-wide photo finish. Bristol today, I think, was the perfect old school NASCAR race. So I'm going to give Bristol 100%. Why not? Dramatic tire wear, teams had to figure it out on the fly, plenty of comers and goers. Only 5 cars left on the lead lap at the end, but it was still wildly entertaining. No crazy wrecks or wild restarts late. Close finish between 2 future Hall of Famers. Yeah, I think today's Food City 500 was a triumphant return to Bristol concrete. 100%. Didn't give a single 100% all of last season. I think Atlanta and Bristol have earned it these first couple weeks. Both polarizing races. A lot of fans still can't wrap their head around new super speedway style Atlanta, and I completely get it. And I'm sure many fans out there didn't love everything they saw out there today. The tire wear was almost too chaotic. To some, maybe it was unpredictable, especially early when they didn't have much data. Another argument in favor of more practice. But while I understand many fans' concerns, if you didn't like Atlanta or you didn't like Bristol, I respectfully will have to disagree with your opinion. That's the great thing about opinions. Everyone's allowed to have one and they're allowed to differ. Let me know, though, if you agreed with my opinion of today's Food City 500 at Bristol by leaving a comment down in the comment section below. Gosh, there's so much good stuff. Didn't even touch on, Eric Jones, Chase Briscoe, their rivalry continuing into this weekend. Sounds like they finally met up and were able to talk things over. Didn't even mention John Hunter Nemechek and Joey Logano looked like made contact at one point. They've got some history going back to what happened at Phoenix last week. Same can be said about Chastain and Blaney. We saw Blaney a little off the bottom. Chastain stuck his nose in there, as he's known to do. More contact, kind of hosed Blaney. They've got history going back to last year's Phoenix finale. Rivalries resurfacing, and none of those are the leading story. That's how dramatic this race at Bristol Motor Speedway truly was. Let me know what you thought of today's race down in the comment section below. Let me know how your favorite driver did. Were there any storylines that flew under the radar that perhaps I missed? Tomorrow I'll have to update my weekly Out of the Groove power rankings. Oh, I can't wait for that. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. We talk NASCAR all day, every day, all year long here on Out of the Groove. And a huge thank you to my very generous Patreon supporters. Appreciate those of you in my Patreon exclusive fantasy league. I'll have to check on my roster. Hopefully things held up for me. I know I had Denny in my lineup, so that's 2 weeks in a row. I think I've had the winner, so that's good. I'll have to check on it here in a moment. Thank you all so much for tuning into this episode, y'all. I will catch you again later this week. Have a wonderful rest of your St. Patrick's Day. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you this week. Take it easy, y'all.